Hey, next on the T Nation, thanks for coming back and tuning in to part 2 of this week's show featuring two of the top instructors in our game, Jon Decker and Tom Stickney. Jon Decker is the Director of Instruction at the Medallion Club over in Columbus, Ohio. He is also the 2015 Southern Ohio Teacher of the Year and a Golf Tips Magazine Top 25 Instructor and Senior Editor as well. Tom Stickney has been a Golf Magazine Top 100 instructor and a part of their Top 20 Teachers Under 40. Golf Digest has named him a Top 50 International Teacher, and Golf Tips Magazine, again, has him as also a member of their Top 25 instructors. So sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next hour or so. Before we get started, I want to remind you about our friends over at 2 Under. 2 Under men's performance briefs are the unofficial underwear of the PGA, Ryder Cup, and President's Cup teams, and are sold in over 3,000 golf pro shops and golf specialty retailers nationwide. Ricky Fowler is their global ambassador, and over 50 other PGA, Korn Ferry, and Champions Tour players wear them. Just to mention a few, they are David Toms, Jerry Kelly, Justin Thomas, William McGirt, Scott McCarron, and Chris DeMarco. The Joey Pouch technology provides the ultimate male asset management, delivering maximum comfort from the tee box to the boardroom to the bedroom. Go to 2under.com to check out the bundle specials that offer substantial discounts for being a Next on the Tee listener. That's the number 2, UNDR.com. 2 Under, performance in your pants.
Every January, PGA Tour Superstore pros meet every manufacturer, learn about the latest equipment, log thousands of hours of training, and together hit over 100,000 balls. All so they can get you the perfect fit.
All right, now making a long overdue return visit with me is Jon Decker. Jon is the Director of Instruction at the Medallion Club over in Columbus, Ohio. Later this winter, you're going to be able to find him at the Dennis Meyer Golf School at the Hibiscus Club in Naples, Florida. Jon also spent 12 years at the New Albany Country Club in New Albany, Ohio. And prior to that, he spent 20 years as the head instructor at the Grand Cypress Academy of Golf in Orlando, Florida. Jon was named the 2015 Southern Ohio Teacher of the Year. He is the senior editor and a top 25 instructor for Golf Tips Magazine. He has also worked with players at just about every level on every tour. He is a wonderful public speaker and the author of 2 books, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, and his latest is titled Fairways to Heaven, One Shot at a Time, which you can get on his website, deckergolf.com, or out on Amazon. And I couldn't be more honored I get to have him back with me again this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Jon, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you, Chris, for having me on the show, and congratulations on the success of your show. I'm very happy for you.
I appreciate that very much, my friend. So, Jon, before we get into talking about the new book, as you mentioned in it, you consider Black Mountain, North Carolina to be your hometown, even though you were born in Augusta, Georgia. Now, Hurricane Helene hit both of those cities very hard. I just wanted to kind of touch base with you. Have you been in touch with folks back in those areas to see how things are going? Because, like I say, those 2 cities seem to be devastated right now.
Yes, it's just tragic. I have been in contact with my family. My mother and father actually came up this past week for the book launch that we did at the Medallion Club, and my father was leaving on Wednesday, and he drove and barely made it there. In fact, when he was driving, the water was so high that it was at the bottom of his door, and he has a Lexus, which is low to the ground. So he luckily got home safely. My mother is still here in Ohio and probably will be here for quite a while because there's obviously no power there. Cell service has been very spotty. I've been in touch with some of my family, through text, some through talking, and it's been very frustrating. And I know this has been frustrating for them as well. But our hearts and prayers go out to everyone in Western North Carolina and throughout the Georgia and Florida and all the areas that have been hit. But for me personally, I write about Black Mountain being my hometown, and to have this happen is just something I never thought would happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, prayers up to everybody out there. Hopefully things get restored and back to normal very soon. But yeah, tough times. And like I say, prayers up for all of the folks that are dealing with this horrible tragedy. Jon, let's talk about happier subjects like your home course. You're at the Medallion Club. It's just outside of Columbus, established back in 1992. You got a couple of courses there designed by Jack Nicklaus, which isn't a shock since it's right outside of his hometown. Talk about the club and what you have there.
Well, the courses are fantastic. Both New Albany and Medallion are Nicklaus designed courses. And it's funny because I've been in the golf business since 1992, and I worked at Grand Cypress, which was Nicklaus design. Then I went to New Albany, which is Nicklaus design. And now I'm at Medallion, which is obviously a Nicklaus design. And we have 27 holes, fantastic membership, very active membership. And the programs are really growing, and I've been really excited about that. Teaching is my passion, so I love getting people into the game, introducing them to the game, and working with really players of all levels. But it's a great area. And the thing about Columbus, Ohio, is when their season hits, I mean, they are into golf. They do not take a sunny day for granted. If the course is open, somebody's out there playing, and the only time you won't see people really on the golf course is when Ohio State is playing football, and then it's a ghost town. It's the complete opposite. So, but other than that, it's really, you have to really fight for tee times up here.
The clubhouse there at the Medallion Club reminds me kind of a mixture of a grand state government building and a little bit of Augusta National. It's got to be pretty awe-inspiring looking up at it from whether you're out on the putting green or as you're approaching the 18th green from the fairway. Talk about the grandeur of the clubhouse.
Yeah, it's a massive clubhouse. The actual, I don't know the square footage of the clubhouse itself, but it is a massive facility, and it is. You can see it from throughout the property, and it's just something that here at Medallion we're very proud of.
You've talked about the courses that you've been at, all being a Nicklaus design. Have you ever had an opportunity to spend any time with Mr. Nicklaus?
No, I have not, and he is my childhood hero. The times I've sent him a book, have not gotten any response yet. Maybe one day I will, but no, I have not spent any time with him, and that's something that would be definitely on my bucket list.
All right, let's get into the new book. And again, it's titled Fairways to Heaven, One Shot at a Time. And if I understand this correctly, John, it came out of the column that you actually started writing for Golf Tips magazine by the same title. Talk about where the inspiration came from to write this second book.
Well, I never really thought about writing a second book. When my first book was finished, Ted Odorico reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to be one of the senior editors for the magazine. He really wanted me to write golf instructional articles, do videos for the magazine, and I wanted to do that. I mean, but to me, I wanted to take it another step further, and so I asked him. I said, I would like to create a Christian-based feature called Fairways to Heaven. And I would like to start each article out with scripture, tell a golf story, tell a life story. I like to show how scripture, golf, and life are all related. And I said, you're probably going to get some pushback. There's probably going to be some people out there that don't want to see scripture, but I think that your readers are going to enjoy it. And if they don't like it, then we'll move on from it. So after the first issue came out, we did get some pushback from 2 people who emailed in. But other than that, we got tons of emails that came in that were positive. Ted was very accommodating and allowing me to go ahead and go ahead and continue the feature from there. And after doing this for about a year and a half, I said, if I took all these features and I put them together, I would have another book. So I started writing them with that in mind, that, hey, this is eventually going to go into a book. And I put in some chapters in a tribute to Phil Rogers that is not, been out in the magazine. But what I was amazed about was when I started putting everything in order, and then I read it from chapter 1 to the very end, it all flowed. Everything fell together. But some of the things that I wrote early on went very far back in the book, and some of the things I wrote toward the end went in the front of the book. So God was in charge of this. He was the architect of this book. And I was just writing what I was inspired to write. And then when I put it all together, I was like, wow, this really came out well. And so I'm very proud of the book, and hopefully the listeners out there will take a look at it.
John, like you, Jack Nicklaus was one of my idols growing up. And you talk in the book about 1980 being a big year for Jack. He won the U.S. Open and the PGA Championship that year at the age of 40. And you also just mentioned Phil Rogers. And Phil Rogers was a guy that Jack went to for help with his short game. But Phil also became a mentor to you. Talk about that.
Phil has been a huge influence in my life. When I started at Grand Cypress, I really didn't know who Phil Rogers was. I knew that, Nicholas was my hero, and I really didn't know that much about Phil. But after spending a little bit of time there, I learned very quickly who he was. I started looking into his career, and as time has gone on, he would tell me stories about. We would all hear stories, and he would talk about stories because we were constantly asking him questions. But he was such a great influence on not only me, but our entire staff in creating a system of teaching that was very structured, that we were, working on, putting, chipping, pitching, bunker. Everything was very detailed, and it was really an amazing experience because not only could he demonstrate and do these amazing short game shots, but he had the ability to say it in so many different ways. So if you got someone who was really analytical coming in, he could tailor a presentation or a lesson to them. If you got someone who was more feel oriented, he could tailor a presentation or a lesson to that person. Watching him teach Paul Azinger and Raymond Floyd are some of the highlights of my career, as well as Brad Fax and just tons of other instructor or other PGA Tour players that I got to see him teach during my time at Grand Cypress. So it was like I kind of equate it to going like a back in time and going into the Golf Hall of Fame and hearing his stories about playing with Ben Hogan and playing in the Masters and all of the experiences he had. It was something that I'll never forget and feel so blessed to be a part of.
You also mentioned that your favorite story involving Phil Rogers is actually one between he and Gary Player. Do you mind sharing that one?
Yes, that's in the Buried. It's called The Buried Lies, the name of the chapter. And Phil was playing with Gary Player at the Masters. They were on number 15, and they both went for the green in two. And Gary hit his ball in the bunker on the right, and Phil hit his bunker on the right as well. And their balls were only a few feet apart from each other. But Phil's ball was buried on the downslope of the bunker, and Gary's ball was on the upslope of the bunker. And so Phil said that when he got there, he said, "Well, if I hit," he goes, "I knew if I tried to hit the shot, I could get it out on the green, but it wouldn't stop; it would roll into the pond." And so he said, "But I couldn't turn around and play it backwards." He goes, "I could get it out if I played it backwards, but the grandstands were right there, so I couldn't hit it into the grandstands." So he said, I think the best thing for me to do here is to just pop it out and get it out of the downslope, and just take my he always would call it taking my medicine, and just dislodge it from the buried lie, get it on. He goes, I knew if I could get it on the upslope, it was a rather easy shot. So he hit it and only hit it a few feet, and when he hit it, everyone moaned because everyone thought that he had mishit the shot. And then he calmly went up and hit his next shot and flopped it up on the green, and it just trickled down. He said, he just let gravity take it to the hole, and the ball went right into the middle of the hole. And then Gary Player got up there and hit this beautiful bunker shot and flew it all the way to the hole. So Gary Player didn't use the slope. He used air time to carry the ball to the hole, which took a tremendous amount of nerve and to execute a shot like that under that kind of pressure. But anyway, he pulled the shot off and hit it about a foot away from the hole. And he said, when Phil hit the shot and the ball went in the hole, he got a smattering of applause, he said. But when Gary Player hit the shot, everyone stood up and gave him a standing ovation. And he said, but when we walked off the hole, we both had the same score, and that was 4. And so I really learned a lot from that because later on, I was trying to qualify for the U.S. Open. I did the same thing. I was 1 under par. I was playing really well. I was on my 9th hole. I hit it in the bunker. I got on the downslope, buried lie. I dislodged it. I thought to myself, what would Phil do here? And I did the same thing he did. I dislodged it, and then I hit my next shot up about 4 feet away and made the putt and made bogey. Ended up missing, a chance to move on by 1 shot. But I was proud of myself because I learned a lesson from Phil that had nothing to do with how to hit bunker shots or how to swing the club. It was all about managing your game and getting the most out of your score. And Phil was always about, don't run up your score making bad decisions, because when you make a bad shot on the golf course, the most important decision you have to make on the golf course is after a bad shot. You have to have the discipline to be able to make smart decisions and to cut your losses as much as possible and then move on to the next hole.
John, tell the story about when you realized that teaching the game is really what you wanted to do, and then having to get your own swing to a level that you thought it needed to be so that you could actually be a really good instructor.
Well, when I was living in Orlando, I was 25 at the time, and I needed a job. I was desperate for a job, and so I went to one of my friends said, "You ought to go to Grand Cypress and apply for a bag room position." And so I knew that if I did that, I would get fast cash right away. And so I went to Grand Cypress, and when I was sitting in HR and I was being interviewed, the lady there said, "You know, John, you have a great personality. I think you would do really well at our golf academy." And I said, "What's the golf academy?" And she said, "Well, it's our golf school." She goes, "I'll take you over there." And we got in a cart and she drove me over there, and I walked up on the tee, and I'll never forget it. I looked out and I could see all the students sitting in chairs. We had a par three, a par five, and a par four, and a dual driving range. And I saw just students taking lessons, and it was like I was struck with a bolt of lightning. I knew at that very moment that I wanted to be a golf instructor. I knew at that very moment that teaching golf was what I wanted to do with my life, and I just made up my mind at that point. That was what I was going to do. And so then I went on to start out at the bottom, picking the driving range, and work my way up, and was just so fortunate to be able to find the career that I love. And it's really nice when you go and do something that you enjoy doing, and you get to call it work. That's a very rewarding thing.
John, we're all familiar with the passage, I can do all things through Christ. Talk about the significance that has for you and learning that negative, counterproductive thoughts don't come from God.
Well, that's a great point there, Chris, because there's a chapter in the book called The Inner Voice, and I learned a lot from when Zach Johnson won the British Open in 2015. When he got done or he was being interviewed after the tournament, he was crying, and I still remember this. And he said, "I just kept saying scripture all day long." And I started thinking to myself, wow, when I was trying to play competitively on the mini tours and trying to, I had a dream of being a PGA Tour player, like a lot of golf professionals out there, club professionals. I'm sure we all start out with that dream of playing on the PGA Tour. But when I was out there, I had all these negative thoughts going on. I had negative thoughts. I had, like, you have the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. And I was listening to the devil. I was listening to him tell me about the water and the trees and the out of bounds and all these negative things. And it really made me understand how important, golf is a mental game. It's played between the ears, and it comes down to those who are mentally tough and can fall back on something. Well, Zach Johnson had figured it out. He wasn't going to rely on his own strength. He was going to rely on the strength of God. And so Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I say that all the time whenever I get in a difficult situation on the golf course or a difficult situation in life. I say that because that's my favorite verse. And when I was writing the book, when I first started my first book in 2012 is when I started that. I would go to bed at night, and that same voice that would sit there and tell me about the water that's out there and the out of bounds, that same voice, who I believe was Satan, was telling me, "John, you're never going to write a book. Who would read your book? You're not an author. You're a golf pro. What are you doing? You don't want to do this." And that negative voice kept going on and on and on. And finally, I got sick of it. And so one day I would lay in bed and I just kept saying, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And I kept saying that, and the voice went away. And so I think it's important that we all have scripture that we can rely on, because we're in a spiritual warfare when we're out there on the golf course, when we're in our daily lives, when we're in relationships. And if you have something to fall back on and use a weapon that you can fight this warfare with, I think that you're going to do much better in life. You're going to enjoy the game of golf more. You're going to enjoy life more, and you're going to get the most out of your life.
So, John, let's take that a half a step further because the enemy's negative voice comes to all of us. Usually it's in the wee hours of the morning when it wakes us up if we're struggling with something, or like you mentioned, a crucial moment in our lives. Maybe it's out on the golf course when there's a tough shot that we have to play, or we're getting into the thick of a tournament or a match that we're playing in. How did you learn how to combat that voice?
I kept saying the scripture. I mean, to me, the scripture is everything. It's the word of God, because without Jesus Christ in my life, without God in my life, I cannot fight that. The temptations of the world, I can't fight Satan. I can't fight any of the things that are negative in this world. But with that, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So through Christ means giving your life to Christ, giving your worries to Christ. And I think that's one of the most important thing that you can
Yes.
do in life is to give your worries to God. Just say to Him, I can't handle this. I don't know how this is going to work out, but I know that you know how it's going to work out. And God is standing on my future right now, and He is standing with me right now, and He's standing where I was when I first came onto this earth on January 12th, 1967. So God has been with me my entire life. He knows where I'm going, and so I just have to put my faith and trust in Him. And I couldn't imagine going through this life as someone who is not a believer in God, who is not a believer that there is something more to this earth, because I just feel like it would be impossible to go through this life, and you may have some moments where things are good, but in the end, it's a very lonely existence.
You go on to say in the book that the difficult lives we all experience in life are a part of God's plan, that human instinct is to force our way out, but God asks us to be content in our situation and let Him do the heavy lifting. That isn't easy for all of us to do because we tend to want to always try to force things to happen. How can we learn contentment?
I think it starts by putting our pride to the side. I think that one of the original sins in the Bible is pride. You're a proud person. Men are taught to be strong. You're taught to be, the leader of the house or whatever, or hopefully the spiritual leader of your household. But in reality, we need something that's stronger than us to lead us first. And so when you prioritize things, I still have to do the work. God's just not I can't just say, God, I want you to get me through this day and I'm not going to do anything. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that when you ask God first, and then the key thing in prayer is to ask and then listen. Not just ask and go do, but ask and then listen to what God is asking you to do. And a lot of times it will come to you. It may not come to you right at that second, but I can't tell you how many times I've been in the middle of the day and all of a sudden something pops in my head, especially when it comes to writing these articles. Sometimes I get, like writer's block, and I'm like, how am I going to tie all this together? And I'll just pray. And it's amazing to me. I can just be in the middle of the day and then all of a sudden it pops in my head. I'm like, oh, okay, that's how I can tie it all together. And that's a great idea for a chapter or whatever it may be. So I think asking first and then listening and then doing the work, and I think that's important as well. There's a great story in the book about moving the stone when Jesus asked the people to move the stone away when he rose Lazarus from the tomb. He asked the people. He said, "Move the stone." The people had to do the work. He asked them to do the work, and then and then Jesus provided the miracle. So I think that we all have to do our work as well. So whenever I do my work and whenever I'm doing the work of God, when I know I'm doing something that God wants me to do, I think to myself, I'm moving the stone. I'm doing the work that He's wanting me to do.
John, just a couple more before I let you go. And later on in the book, you talk about the mistake that you see many instructors make, and that's spending too much time focused on the problem instead of the solution. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that one of the biggest mistakes I see with young teachers is they rely too much on video. They rely too much on technology. And I always equate it to, like, if I was extremely overweight and I went to a personal trainer and I said I want to lose 100 pounds, the first thing that the trainer is probably going to do is they're going to put me on the scale, and they're going to say, okay, John, you weigh 300 pounds or whatever it is. Okay, and so then he's going to put me through exercises and I'm going to work. But he doesn't say, okay, I want you to do 10 push-ups and then I'm going to put you back on the scale. Okay, you still weigh 300 pounds. Now I want you to walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes and get on the scale. That's not how a good trainer is going to do it. I see that a lot in teaching the game. Every time someone hits a shot, they look at the video, they look at the numbers on the TrackMan. They're constantly giving the student that information. Now, that information is important, but that information is a measurement of where that student is at that moment. It is not to be used for every single shot. And what happens is if you keep showing someone negative information, they are not going to come out of that lesson with a positive uh, focus of what they need to work on. So I look at the video when I video students. I'll video them very quickly in the beginning of the lesson. Here's what we're going to work on. Here's what you're doing right. Here's what you're doing wrong. Here's what we're going to work on. And then I put the video away and I get right into helping them, working on changing the behaviors. And it always goes back to the setup. It always goes back to the grip, ball position, distance from the ball, width of the stance, something along that posture, weight distribution. There's so many things in the setup that I attack first. And then from there, we build the swing. And then we'll do the video later, maybe as a follow-up. So I think that that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see. I look at video, I look at TrackMan, I look at all the technology, all the teaching aids that are out there. I look at them like tools that I would have in my toolbox, but I want to make sure that ultimately I'm addressing the issue, the root cause of their problem, and I'm trying to focus on that and not the negative of what they're doing in their swing.
Jon, before I let you go, tell our audience what's up next for you and how can they find you, because you're a wonderful speaker, as I mentioned in your intro. You do book signings. You've got a lot of things going on. If they want to get instruction, if they want to come listen to you speak, what's up next for you?
Well, first of all, Chris, thank you again for having me on the show. This has been a blast, and I really appreciate it. For the listeners out there, you can go to my website. It's deckergolf.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn. I will come to your facility. We could work something out where I could come there. I would love to come and do some speaking. It could be at your church. It could be for a golf tournament, like a charity tournament. It could be to just speak to your membership, do a book signing. But we can do a clinic. We can do golf instruction, and we can do a book signing at your club. So if you're interested in having something that's unique at your facility, feel free to reach out to me on deckergolf.com, and I will be glad to get in touch with you. And I'm willing to come see you, especially during the off season when I'm, down in Florida. I have more time to do that. But I'd love to come to your facility, and hopefully I'll see you real soon, Chris.
Jon, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come back and be a part of the show. You're fantastic, my friend. I hope we get the privilege of catching up with you again soon.
Thank you, brother.
See you, Jon.
All right. Bye-bye.
That is Jon Decker. Jondecker is the spelling of his name. Again, the books are Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, and his latest Fairways to Heaven, One Shot at a Time. You can find it out on deckergolf.com. Jon is he was wonderful when this early on in this show. I think it's almost actually been 7 years to the day, unfortunately, I'm ashamed to say, since the last time Jon was a part of the show. So we'll definitely get him back on the show more frequently, but his instruction is fantastic. He's a wonderful speaker, and he makes you feel good about yourself and good about where you're headed in the game when you talk to him and when you read his books. They're inspirational. They're going to make you feel better, and he's going to give you some ways to help you think better and play better along the way as well. So my thanks to Jon for coming back on the show. Like I say, we'll get him back way sooner next time around. Coming up next is a guy who has been one of the top 100 instructors in our game for many, many years. He is also a top 50 international teacher, and that is Tom Stickney. Before I bring Tom into the show, let's talk about our friends over at Squares Golf. And folks, do you sway and you're off balance in your golf swing? You know what? It could be your shoes. A golf shoe needs structure to provide stability and reduce sway. How can you tell if your shoes lack structure and are hurting your game? If you can hold your shoes by the toe and heel and twist it, toss it. Squares was designed for the perfect balance of structure and comfort. Isn't it time you tried Squares? Try the new Speedbolt at squares.com. That's SQAIRZ.com. All right. Now next on the tee with me is top instructor Tom Stickney. Let me give you a little bit of background on Tom. He has not only been a Golf Magazine top 100 instructor, he was also a part of their top 20 teachers under 40. Golf Digest named him a top 50 international teacher. Golf Tips Magazine has named him a top 25 instructor. The Golf Machine Organization awarded him a doctorate degree in the principles and applications of the golf swing in 2004. He has published well over 150 articles across a wide selection of publications. He's been on the cover of Golf Digest, Japan Golf Today, Golf Magazine, Golf Tips, Golf Illustrated, Golf for Women, Senior Golfer, and many others. He's currently the lead teaching professional at Jonathan's Landing Golf Club in Jupiter, Florida, and I'm excited he is back with me again this week here on Next on the Tee. Hey, Tom, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's nice to be back on the show. It's nice to talk to you again, and I'm very, very pleased to be here, and thank you so very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Same here, my friend. So, Tom, one of the things I've been talking about a lot this season with several of your peers is how coaching and instruction has changed over the years. Hal Sutton, which I mentioned in the last segment and coming back next week, he's talked about how he used to have to dig it out of the dirt back in the day, and the ball flight was everything. Well, nowadays, we have all kinds of technology. We got lots of data points. How have you seen instruction change over the years during the course of your career?
That's a great question. If you think back, instruction first started with you'd stand up there and you'd kind of watch your buddy hit balls and you'd say, well, I think you need to do this. I think you need to do that. And, that's pretty much where we had it. And it was a very proprietary closed shop. And then over time, video came out. And then with video, we kind of fell into the habit of going, well, okay, the club needs to be here, 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 here. And if you don't have it in that position or it doesn't look aesthetically pretty, then obviously you can't play as well as you're capable. And it was funny because the first thing that happens is somebody says, "Well, you're going to tell me if I don't swing it like L's, then I can't play." And a lot of people were like, "Well, you need to be in these certain reasonable positions." And then all of a sudden somebody says, "Well, what about Furyk? What about Bruce Litsky? What about these other different swings that work?" And we really didn't have an answer for them other than, well, that's just an outlier. And then as time went on, TrackMan and came out, and all of a sudden with TrackMan, we started seeing a little bit more of being able to use your own swing to create numbers and patterns that helped to produce the ball flight that you were looking for. And then we got out of really getting so swing bound and saying that, you can pick the club up if you reroute it, or you can whip the club inside if you move it this way or that way. It really all depends on what kind of parameters you're looking to have within your ball flight. And then as time has continued to move on, now we're into, ground force reactions, obviously huge, with swing catalyst and then different places and opportunities like that. And then now we've kind of worked into 3D motion analysis with, sports box and things like that. And so I think what's happened is we started off being very visually based. Then we become very data based. And now it's just more about what you do as an individual to produce the shot patterns that work for you personally. It doesn't mean that it has to work for everybody else. But it needs to work for you, and it needs to be repeatable for you. And to be repeatable, we need to have certain data sets and certain parameters that we fall within. That does not necessarily mean that everybody has to make the same golf swing or everybody has to look a certain way. But we've certainly seen instruction change with all the technology that's out there. The biggest problem is that, unfortunately, with a lot of teachers, is that they use that stuff and that information to overwhelm a student or to impress a student with how much they know, as opposed to doing what they set out to do when they walked into the lesson, is make the student better. And really and truly, sometimes you need all of it, sometimes you need one part of it, and sometimes you don't need any of it. But the bottom line is you got to make the student better, and you got to do what they ask you to do. And fortunately, technology has made that easier. It's just a matter of buffering what I tell the student and what I'm not supposed to tell the student.
Tom, have personal launch monitors and simulators and Top Golf, have all of those things made it easier or more challenging to give lessons because amateurs like me now think we know more than we really do?
That's a great question. I had a student today, and it was funny. He has a launch monitor in his house, a simulator launch monitor. And, he was saying, I work on my golf swing, and he was off on a tangent working on, a couple aesthetic things that he had seen on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or what have you, that he thought he needed to do to work with in order to get better. But unfortunately, he was working on the effect rather than the cause. And so a lot of my job with people that have access to those wonderful attributes is to put them in a position where I can say, hey, look, you know what? Let's work on the cause and let's the effect take care of itself. And then you're going to use your personal launch monitor as a feel to, to teach yourself feel. So let's say that the guy's coming out to in a little bit, and we want to get him from the inside. So we set up some sort of drill with maybe some sticks or some alignment rods or an impact bag or what have you, and we make the club come more from the inside. It's up to the student to figure out at home what that feel is because I don't know what the student feels. I only know what I've been told and I only know what I've experienced myself. So for the student, we need to help them to understand feels. And if you have access to those things in your house, you can really teach yourself feels as opposed to getting bogged down in the numbers. But sometimes people go off on a tangent and they start to instead of looking for the low hanging fruit, they're working on stage 8 when they should be working on stage 2.
Tom, just kind of going back in your career, do you remember the very first lesson you ever gave?
That's a great thought. I do remember the first. I don't remember the first one I gave, but I remember one of the first times that I felt lost on a lesson tee, which was very early in my career. I had a guy that was shanking the golf ball. It was a friend of my father's, and I bet I hadn't been teaching a month. And he comes in shanking the golf ball, and I'm thinking that all of a sudden the guy's okay, shank. That means he's coming in to out. Hossel's hitting the golf ball, and off it goes into right field somewhere. Well, I didn't even take the time to think about the fact that you could shank it from out to in and catch it off the hosel and do that. So every drill I gave him exacerbated his out to in shank, and he came in moving it instead of 45 degrees to the right, it was more than that, and he wasn't real happy with me. But it made me it's funny to look back on it now, but it made me really take the time to really want to learn everything that I can about golf instruction, about what other people teach, because you just don't know it all. And even if you think you know it all, you really don't. It takes a little bit of time to, and it only takes one student like that to remind you to put you back in your place. That you know what? Sometimes we all feel like it's our first lesson that we've ever taught, and that's certainly one of the ones that if Sam ever decides to come back, I'll give him a free lesson.
Tom, speaking about looking back, I was looking back over some of your video lessons that are out there on YouTube, and you were talking about how to get more distance 10 to 12 years ago. Have any of those techniques changed with what you've learned since then, plus with the advancement of club and ball technology?
I think a lot of what has changed is we know a lot more about the ballistics of impact. We know a lot more about where to hit it on the club face. We know a lot more about the type of parameters when it comes to angle of attack or when it comes to launch and spin and face to path and all those wonderful variables that go into distance that help to increase your club head speed, your ball speed, and all that stuff. I think we just know a lot more about what's efficient, what's not efficient, whether it comes from the TrackMan where it's just the club and ball outcome, whether it comes to Swing Catalyst where it's how you're using the ground, or whether it comes through using some of these systems like the stack system and some of these swing systems that you put the weights on and swing hard and work on that. The TPI and a lot of the other organizations are touting. A lot of it is just tying all those things in together. We just didn't really, back years ago, it was just you want to hit it further. Okay, well, you need either more swing length or more swing width. We really didn't understand that much about how to use the ground. We didn't really understand that much about where to hit on the club face and how to use the right golf ball and the right shaft and the right techniques to get the ball to do what we want and to have the proper spin and launch and landing angle and all that kind of good stuff. But so I think it's just the totality of everything that's been put together that's really taken us to the next level because there's not too many stones that are left unturned now. If a kid can't hit it very far now, it's either his body, the ballistics of how the club and ball are interacting, or he's not using the ground. And so, or it's a combination of all of those. So it's one thing that, that you have to really work on. But I think, just learning a little bit more about everything, we've become better. And we certainly organizations, that have pushed the boundaries like TPI and some other these launch monitor companies and swing technology companies have really helped us to get better, thank goodness. And with the ball technology being, better than ever, you can't help but succeed in today's day and age if you just do the right things.
Tom, when I was growing up, my instructor used to drill into my head, let the club do the work. Now it's all about swinging faster to get more club head speed. Should everybody be doing speed training and learn how to swing faster and worry about towards later? Or should we learn how to get it in the fairway and let speed come?
Well, I think we go back to first, what can your body handle when it comes to stability and mobility? I mean, have you gone through an assessment, a physical screening to understand exactly what you can and cannot do? That's would be the first thing that I would do is to just go through one of those physical screenings. It helps me to understand as the teacher, what your limitations are, and then from there, if you have those, if those things are in sync, so to speak, then we can start to work on hitting it a little bit further and getting a little bit more distance. But, I think if we go back and we go back to a 12-year-old kid, I think, yeah, you know, you teach him just to swing for the fences and hit it as far as he can. We can always scale it back. It's a whole lot easier to tighten somebody up than it is to make them swing faster, longer, and harder. It's just really really difficult. I know from my own experience. I'm 53 now, and I'm just getting to the point now where I'm starting to lose club head speed, and flexibility, and it's funny. I'll go play with the assistant pros or some of our members at Jonathan's Landing, that are good players, and they're hitting it, 50 and 60 and 70 yards by me, and it's getting to the point now where I either have to move up a set of tees or I'm gonna have to start doing something, and I start to realize that, you know, that I was taught to swing for to find the fairway, to be able to hit, the 9 windows and to be able to hit all the fairways and all the greens, and I wasn't really taught a lot about distance output, and I think that hampers me because I just can't go out and swing harder. It just doesn't work that way. I can make incremental increases with some of the things that I talked about earlier, but it's gonna take some time. It's not a quick process, and it's not that I'm gonna be able to add 10 miles an hour club head speed in the next 30 days or 60 days. So, unfortunately, I think a lot of genetics and a lot of what you were taught and what you grew up doing is kind of influences what you kind of continue to do. I mean, I think it would be a lot easier to teach John Daly to take it to 3/4 than it would be to teach John Cook, who is at 3/4, to take it out up like John Daly.
So, speaking of being 53 and I'm 59, does any of the instruction, the tips, the things that you're looking at to do, does any of that change for players that are coming to you that are north of 50?
Oh, no question. The first thing I do is run everybody through a TPI assessment. I'm an exercise science major, so I'm very, very pro the body. In the aspect that if I don't know what your limitations are, how in the world am I going to understand what you can and can't do? If you have poor shoulder rotation, that you'll hear it termed internal and external shoulder rotation, which is just it's just how the right elbow, and we're going to use the right elbow, how the right elbow works in the golf swing when you transition the club. If you can't make that particular motion, it's going to be really hard for you to drop the club to the inside. So if we can't drop the club to the inside using that particular articulation, then we're going to have to find another way to work around it. Maybe we go the other way and hit cut shots. Maybe we try to shallow the club in another way. There's certainly ways you can work around physical limitations, but I think just based on my own experience, I really have started to feel that people, instructors that is, do not pay enough attention to what students can and can't do. The gentleman that picks it straight up and doesn't pick it up and not turn because that's what he's decided to do. It's probably because there's some sort of physiological limitation in there that's causing him to lift the club straight up. And sometimes you can work with it with a personal trainer, and you can work around it if they're willing to put the time in the gym. And then other times they're not going to do anything different. So you have to kind of work around it as an instructor, and that's where our knowledge comes in about making different swings and recovery moves. So it's certainly different as you get older. And as you continue to get older, and as you continue to lose flexibility and lose, control of your mobility and stability of your body, yeah, a lot of this does change, and it makes it a lot harder for you to do what you're capable of. Because unfortunately, we're not all 22 anymore. And we certainly don't have the flexibility that we did at 22 or 25 or 30, for that matter.
Tom, I want to switch gears just slightly because I want to talk about something that I'm struggling with my golf swing, and I know lots of other people do as well, and that's with early extension or coming over the top. For those of us that can't seem to get back in sync, what can we do in order to quit coming over the top and get that ball back being straight as opposed to a pole hook?
Well, I tell you what, if I had the magic dust, I tell you, I'd own a lot of golf courses. No, but in all sincerity, the greatest drill that I've seen is to take one of those alignment sticks, and I use this in my lessons all the time. I'll put it a foot or so outside the golf ball, and about halfway back in the takeaway. So you kind of miss it on the way down, but it's kind of angled at the same angle as the club shaft. So it's just sitting out there in space, and it basically, if you come over the top, you'll be the first to know because you'll clobber that stick. It really forces you to come from the inside. It really forces you to really keep the right shoulder working back and down in the transition. Where your shoulders are a little bit more closed in transition. You don't get that quick spin, and out goes the right shoulder, and over the top you go. But that that is a great little drill. You could also do the same thing by putting the stick over the top of the golf ball into the ground on your target line where the stick is a little bit in the air over the top of the golf ball. So there's a lot of ways you can do that, but the over the top is quite the hassle. On my YouTube channel, there's Tom Stickney Golf. There's a whole drill segment on using the stick. So if you having trouble following me, what I was explaining on that, you can find it there, and it'll help you to understand where to put that stick and how to get that thing that coming more from the inside. The other way to do it, I would suggest, is hitting balls on an uphill side hill slope where the ball's above your feet. If we have the ball above our feet, it gets our shoulders turning a little bit more horizontally and not so much vertically. And it gives people a good feeling of coming more from the inside. That's another really good way to do it. And if all else fails, stop trying to hit draws and hit cut shots. If you just can't, if you're just pushing a rope uphill, sometimes it's better just to go with it and realize that, Nicholas made a lot of money hitting left or right. So did Hogan. So it's one thing to come over, it's another thing to fix it. But sometimes you just have to go with what you're given that day.
Tom, switching gears again, and I want to get into more of what's going on around the pro game. We just had the President's Cup this past weekend. What'd you think about last week's matches?
I tell you what, I shouldn't say this, but after the 5-0 route in the first session, I think everybody was going up, same old President's Cup. We're gonna just run away with it. And then I was kind of glad to see the alternate shot go back the other way, five, so it was 5 at 5. Um, so it made it a little bit more interesting. It's funny. It's just, you try to make the matches entertaining, and you try to make them closer. And, these guys are just so good now. And the depth is so strong on the American side. It's hard to put together a team that can hang with them, a lot of the time when you start talking about excluding a lot of the countries that they exclude, that participate in the Ryder Cup. But the international team did a good job. They had a lot of fun, and they had a lot of energy and a lot of fire. Obviously, Tom Kim and Sung J M looked like they were having a blast out there. So did Siwoo Kim. So I thought it was great. I I like the aspect that they kind of get into it a little bit, and they kind of get a little chippy with one another. I mean, you should. You're playing for your country, and you should have some fun with it. I think at the end of the day, you can't take it too far, but you just want to make sure that, you think about it. You're playing with your buddies, you're playing for $20. You want to play for just enough where you can give him a hard time, but not too much that if you do beat him, he's not going to talk to you anymore because you know. But I thought it was fun. I love my favorite event is the Ryder Cup without a doubt. I mean, I can watch it from cover to cover, and the President's Cup is quickly becoming another favorite of mine. I just like to see all the passion and the fire, and I love the fact that the guys are doing it for free. I think it's such a great honor. I just think it's cool to see.
Tom, the game at the pro level has been fractured now for a few years. We were supposed to get resolution back last December 31st, which obviously never happened. And we've heard that they are making progress on a partnership between the PGA Tour and the PIF regularly ever since then, but no detail ever comes out. And to me, it kind of feels like the PGA Tour is just kicking the can down the road. Do you think the tours are ever going to come back together? Are they going to figure this thing out?
Man, I hope so. I hope so for golf, and I hope so for, the players and the whole deal, because quite frankly, I don't like the divide, between the two tours. I want to see all the best guys playing together. And maybe it is a global tour like Greg Norman, you know, hypothesized years and years and years ago. And I, I don't know. And, maybe I know that they want to keep the top players playing together, and that excludes the lower tier players, and they don't want to have two tours and the whole thing. And I understand that, but at the end of the day, people come to see the superstars, and if you have a problem with that, play better, make more birdies. It's hard to say that, but I want to see the best players play together, and unfortunately, with the divide in the game, we're not seeing the best players play all the time together, and I don't think that the guys on the Live Tour are as prepared as they might have been otherwise. I'm not saying that all of them are not as prepared, but some of them. Some of them needed those 4 rounds and those tournament reps to get in there, and while others maybe don't. But I do miss seeing the best players play together. But on the flip side, let me tell you something. If somebody's throwing stupid, life changing, generational changing money at me with a guaranteed contract and an unguaranteed, financial game like golf, it'd almost be crazy not to take the money. So I don't discount anybody for taking the big payday. Somebody's it'd be tough to turn down a couple $100 million. That's for sure.
Indeed. Um, but the fracture has kind of left a sour taste in my mouth, and the way that they've handled it and the things that have happened on the PGA Tour and the way Jay Monahan has handled
Oh,
some
certainly.
things. For me, I've watched a little less golf this year because of it. Has
Oh,
it changed your viewing habits at all?
oh, no question. I think that the numbers I would probably be down a little bit because we're not getting the best matchups. Um, you know, I I really think that the PGA Tour needs to look in the mirror, and Monahan needs to really figure out, what his lasting legacy wants to be, and same thing with Norman. He needs to do the same thing and figure out, and they need to come together. They need to stop, posturing and beating their chest about this, that, and the other, and look at it that, okay, look, we figured out that we can have two tours. We do have two tours now, and it's not the best thing for the game. So how can we work together to make this whole? And I don't think that either side has really done what they should do. They should lock themselves in a room and they should figure it out. It can't be that damn hard. I think that it just you can't meet every third month for an hour and decide and think this thing's going to resolve itself. I think it's going to take a lot of time, and I think that until you put them down in a room, you say, "Okay, boys, you know, you're not coming out until you fix it." We'll see what
Yeah.
happens. But
I
they didn't ask me.
I love that idea though. Just a couple more before I let you go, Tom.
Certainly.
Looking out, is there something in the game that you still want to do, like courses maybe that are still on your bucket list, or playing a round of golf with some specific people? Is there something that you're still dying to do?
For me, I think that I've finally gotten to a point in my career where I have a little bit more time, even though I'm busy on the lesson tee, I still have a little bit of time to do some studying. And I really have, because golf instruction is such an open book now, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or what have you, you get a chance to hear what everybody teaches. And I'm still fascinated by what everybody else teaches. I know what I think about everything. And, quite frankly, it gets boring. Hearing only what I think about everything. I want to hear what is X, Y, and Z guy, the hot guy instructor, what's he talking about what's his theory? Now, whether it's right, wrong, or indifference, irrelevant to me. The bottom line is I'm going to learn something. And as a golf instructor, I want to know how to fly the plane, but I also want to know how the plane works. And I want to know how the plane works to the nth degree. And I think that would make me a better pilot. And so I think for me as an instructor, because it's such an open book now, and because people are so willing to share information, I need to continue to practice and study and learn and watch and devour as much content as I can so I can be better to my students. And that doesn't limit itself just to golf instruction. When we start talking about concepts of motor learning or concepts of psychology or all these things, I mean, everything now is such an open book that these kids coming out of these PGM programs, that have just scoured the internet. They don't have the 10,000 hours on the lesson tee, you know, to develop their style, so to speak, or understand quite yet how to deal with the different personalities. But from a mechanical standpoint, they know a heck of a lot, and they know a heck of a lot at a young age, and that's because it's such an open book. So for me, it's continuing to study, continue to go to all the seminars I can, and listen to great people and great teacher friends of mine that you never know, you might learn something.
Tom, you've given thousands of lessons to people at all skill levels. I imagine you've had a lot of great joys of seeing people as they've advanced in their playing careers or as they've just gotten better over time. What is the greatest thing that someone has said to you about the impact that you've had on them?
I think my greatest success story is I took a scratch golfer and I made him a 7 handicap in 23 minutes.
I bet he was
No.
thrilled with that.
He loved it. No. You know, I still get tickled to death to go to the golf course. I'm an early morning person, and I get to the golf course about 6:45, 7 o'clock, and I love to watch the sun come up. I love to watch the dew on the grass and the sun come up and the whole deal and be on the lesson tee. And so for me, just the excitement of somebody coming to the golf course, they're not at work, they're not, going through their mundane daily activities. They're excited to be there, and then for them to have a lesson and then to do something or to conquer something that they've been previously struggling with or previously couldn't do because of my help or a suggestion, and then they get all happy and they're all excited about it. That to me is worth the price of gold. I think that every day is what I wake up for. I don't have a specific story about what somebody has said. There've been, but I do remember a lot of the emotions that I see on the lesson tee where people, when they get that aha moment or the light bulb goes off, the happiness that they have is all. They don't have to say anything. You can tell on their face that's all I need.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Tom, before I let you go, how can our listeners follow you, whether it's on your website or it's over social media?
Best way to find me is just go to Tom Stickney Golf, whether it be on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. Those are always the best way to get me. Or if you not too many Tom Stickneys that teach golf, so there'll be you can Google me and I'm easily found. You can find my phone number, my email anywhere, anytime, anywhere, and drop me a line. And if there's anything I can do for anybody out there, please let me know. That's what my job is, and that's what I love to do. And it could be worse. I could have a real job.
Indeed. Tom, thank you so much for being a part of this week's show. I hope you'll come back soon and share more of your stories and insights with us. You're awesome, my friend.
Thank you, Chris. It was a blast. And as I said, all the best to you. And you've done a wonderful, wonderful job growing this forum. And I'm just really pleased to be on it. And I'm glad to see your success, sir. You deserve it.
Thank you so much for that.
Okay.
All the best to you and your family, Tom. I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
See you, Tom. That is Tom Stickney, folks. Stickney is the spelling of his last name, Tom Stickney Golf. Go out and check out his YouTube and subscribe to that YouTube channel. He's got so much great content out there for you. So it's a great way to learn. Like he said, you can find a lot of videos where you might be struggling with your golf game that he can help you out with. And one of the things that I'm going to take away from this conversation is what he said there at the end. And that is he loves to give people happiness. How great is that? Right? I mean, and you've heard us talk in many segments, including tonight with Doc, where we talk about all the negative self-talk and the things we get down on ourselves for and all of those sorts of things, right? We do that to ourselves. Well, Tom is a guy that's going to be out here to pump you up and help you feel happy about your golf game, feel happy about being out at the golf course. I love the fact that he is out there early, checking out, right? We talk about dew sweepers all the time and see the sunrise and all of the wonderful things, the majesty of that as it comes across the golf course. And then he's going to take that feeling and he's going to help instill it into you. Can't ask for anything better than that. Guy's going to help your golf game, and he's also going to help you feel happier about yourself and being a part of the game and going out and enjoying yourself out on the golf course. That's perfect. That was the perfect way to end tonight's show, and the perfect way for Tom to kind of help us feel better about it, not just our golf swings, but about ourselves. So I look forward to having Tom back on the show again. I hope we get that privilege again very, very soon. All right, my friends, it is time for me to put a bow on this week's edition of Next on the Tee. I want to send out my sincere thanks again to Rocky Blyer, Dr. Bob Winters, Jon Decker, and Tom Stickney for being a part of this week's show. Scheduled to join me next time are Tom Patry will be back with us. Our good friend and 1983 PGA champion Hal Sutton will join me. I always look forward to getting to spend some time with Hal. The expert on all Pittsburgh sports and a member of our Thursday Night Tailgate Guest Hall of Fame over on our football show, Paul Alexander. He'll be here. And then we're going to round things out with one of the all-time great instructors in our game. Jim McLean will make a return visit with us. So it's going to be off the charts next week. I hope you come back and be a part of the show with us. I want to thank our friends over at the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review for hosting this show on their site. For coverage of everything going on in Western Pennsylvania, including your favorite sports, go to triblive.com. You can find this show by clicking on the Sports Section tab, and the most recent episode is going to be front and center for you right there on the homepage of the Sports Section. Or you can click on Sports and then Podcast and then the Next on the Tee logo, and you'll find several episodes from this season available for you there as well. You can also find the show, as you guys know, pretty much anywhere you get your podcast content, including Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audio Boom, and Player.fm. And as always, my thanks to the great folks over at Good Pods for making this show one of their recommended podcasts. So please download their free app and stream your favorite podcast right there on your favorite device. But like I say, each and every week, my thanks go out to each and every one of you for being the greatest supporters in the history of podcasts. I appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Until next week, hit 'em straight, my friends.